I'm so excited to be here with Michael Wagner today. Michael, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're feeling today?
Hi, Todd, and such a pleasure and honor to be on your show, so to speak, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's well, I think Andrew, right, who made an introduction about me, who told you a little bit like about me, but I'm happy to, yeah, tell you anything, of course. I'm originally from Germany, Michael Wagner, Michael Wagner, as you want to call me, American style.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I'm a yoga teacher, Dharma yoga teacher since 2009. So yeah.
Nice. And I just want to preface, I know prior to us conversing, you were concerned about the internet quality. So I'm just out in
Mm.
the front and open, want to mention that if for some reason it gets a little glitchy, that's no big deal. And we'll keep it going. And I'm really so grateful to have access to this type of technology where I can meet you. You're in England now, am I correct? Or are you in Germany?
I'm in London,
You're in
yes.
London. So
Live
here
in
I,
London now.
I get to meet you, and hang out with you for an hour here and this would never be possible without the internet. So I'm so grateful that we have this technology.
You're
Can
in
you,
Florida, right? In
uh,
Palm Beach?
yeah, so in a town called Juno Beach, which is in Palm Beach County. So
Mm.
we're yeah, about an hour and 15 north of Miami.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
We just
Beautiful
have
area. Visited before, right? It's a good way
yeah.
to start maybe
Yeah,
my
yeah.
introduction a little bit, I guess.
Please tell me, when
Because
did
I
you
was
spend time
living
in
at that
Florida?
time, yeah,
Yeah.
I was living at that time in New York, from 2003 onwards. And in 2007, I was also like 2006, 2007, I was like going to Miami for the season, but down there, like to spend a little time away from New York, the winter months. And so I actually was studying acting at that time, method acting in New York. Very intense method, the Eric Morris method. Amazing. However, it goes quite deep in like almost like a little bit of a psychotherapy way, right? And so to snap out of some of the scenes, parts, the plays, I had to find something really to balance, and I didn't know what it was. So I went to Miami at the time, and had my friend that I met on a casting. I have to say I was still doing modeling, as I'm still doing on the side a little, on let's say occasions, and a bit of acting as well now in London. But the friend of mine who was also like a modeling friend, who also said, like, he was talking about yoga and how actors also like have that maybe practice to um, perhaps find a little bit like opening, like maybe calming the mind and such. He was presenting it quite well, but I mean, it was all quite new to me. I have to say, 2007, my knowledge of yoga was zilch, absolute nowhere.
Yes.
Um, and so he introduced me, he invited me to a community yoga class that he was teaching for the city of Miami in Bayfront Park, downtown
Yes.
Miami. Do you know it, the
I
place?
do. I do. I've seen
It's
quite a few
a big,
concerts there. Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, there's a pavilion, like pavilion, sorry,
Yeah.
German English. The basically like outside space was just so gorgeous, and like a big group of, always he was teaching twice a week, or three times actually per week, like 40 to 60 people, from like teachers to like children, all levels.
Nice.
And it was lovely. And so it was the first time that he brought me to the class where I have to admit, I think postponed about 3 times. Took a rain check. I wasn't really ready for it, I think. But then, you let go of the thought, and perhaps I just allowed it. And it was the Dharma Yoga practice that he taught to us. And I want to say a few minutes into the practice, he was a very good teacher too. I can name him with pride. He's a good friend of mine from Argentina. His name is Agustin. If he ever listens to this,
Yeah.
amigo.
What is his
And
last name?
to him, I have to
Augustine.
say really thank you, because like he brought me into the practice at least where I was still eating meat. I was nowhere like ready, to be honest, with where you should be ready, as far as like even going, from the first step. Ahimsa is like Dharma always like reminds us, the first step of non-violence, right? The yamas, niyamas. So that's it, it like hit me quite hard. And I knew like the first practice was the most intense I ever remember, because it was the first where I understood what it is. Maybe, in the sense of my own experience, you have to let go.
Yeah.
You have to just let go in the postures. You have to like trust your body, right? You have to just let go of the fear of hurting yourself, and like you need to, trust a little bit in yourself. And that's really like to me the practice too, perhaps. And in the moment, uh, yeah, I understood it. And for me, that was like when I fell in love with it, you can say. 3 months later, I went back to New York and met Dharma with the introduction of Augustine. Like he brought me to the old center on Third Avenue. Um, and yeah, it was the old ashram. I don't know if you know, it still exists as another yoga center. Um, and he enters the room, and that was like my first experience with Dharma in I want to say, real ashram with a living master that enters the room. And for me, it's like, it was life changing, like changing
Yes.
my way of even perceiving life itself, to be honest, because he's a very powerful spirit, being, however you want to, put it. He's an, incredible, just also blissful self to meet, and I know you spoke to him also on this podcast, which, honors me even more, just to, as the master, have the privilege to also be in this. So when I met Dharma in 2007, I did the first class on a Wednesday, I remember, and it was like the open level class. The times have changed. Um, Obviously, he was a little younger. Now he's 86, and but incredibly strong, like in his practice. And back then, even tougher, I want to say. And yeah, I mean, I want to say physically killed myself in this class. And I stayed for the kirtan after, which was exactly what also, I guess, opened a little bit like my heart to the practice. My spirit really was
Was that the first
enthusiastic
was
about
that
that.
the first
Yeah,
time was that the first time that you had also been exposed to kirtan?
to bhakti and to
Yeah.
kirtan, it was
Yeah.
amazing.
So you're
There
coming
was
in, you're having these really incredibly deep yoga practices. Then you're starting
uh,
to come into the singing and
and Dharma was talking a lot after, and he was staying for the kirtan, singing with us, and there was another artist there, and the people, how they were so like going for it. And yeah,
nice.
can I say
Nice.
it right away triggers something in me, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
gets me a little emotional thinking about it, because it was just such a wonderful first experience. So thanks to Agustin, thanks to Dharma himself back then, because that was, I guess, the birth for me of even like being like somewhere like interested in yoga. So I've continued the practice. jumping forward 6 months, I was improving my practice, but I was still eating meat, and I was like still um, not really like, caring about my diet such, and but always being like in fitness and gyms and like into like nutrition, of course. Um, but in a very much like less yogic way. So yeah, he when my practice wasn't really going from like one level to the next, I was like, what can I do? And Dharma said, well, try out maybe to, eat just vegetarian for a little while. And so I tried it out for, the 6 weeks, 8 weeks I was like setting a goal for. And it really changed something in me, like also like my flexibility improved incredibly. And yeah, so like somehow also my digestion, everything like felt softer and more relaxed, and like it's just like it's such a different feeling.
Yeah.
So I've stick to
Yeah.
it, ever since. I have, my experiences of going back when I went back to Germany and uh, saw my mum for Christmas, and she had made some duck. And awful after like that feeling, and I have to say, and this is one big like sentence that Dharma repeated more often back then. You heard him say it a lot because like Swami Boa, I think, if you heard of him,
I've heard that.
it was a yoga teacher, also one of his friends. I think he left his body at, I think, 126 or something like that, right? Became very, very old. And he was teaching up until the very end. And they were like walking, jogging in the Central Park together. And he was saying like, Swami Boas always says like, don't make your stomach a graveyard, right?
Uh-huh.
And to me, that really took me by my inner understanding, my what is it? And he's like, like, yeah, the stomach is the altar, right? So that's what you serve to yourself, to your higher self, your soul, right? Your heart center. And perhaps if you put it that way, that sentence made me a vegetarian.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it is quite punchy. So for me, I think perhaps it's almost too much to say. Right? But in a way, like that's what it is. Like you need to change perspective when you want to start, like to be serious about maybe your yoga practice.
Yes.
Um, it depends for everyone who's willing and open and ready, perhaps to commit. I suppose, right?
I hear you. I'm curious, what was your, did you have any key experiences in your childhood that you
Mm.
think may have kind of set you up for being interested in yoga? I find a lot of people I get to speak with will have some sort of experience that, even though that won't connect them directly toward a yoga practice right away, but then 10 years, 15, 20 years later, all of a sudden it'll be like, whoa, I'm having this ability to look back on my life and see how these events probably primed my interest in spiritual and or yogic practice. Is there anything that you remember from your childhood that may have played a part in that?
Absolutely. I have to say, at age 12, I found out by a doctor who took an X-ray of my spine, lower back, because I had some pain issues. Like maybe I thought like it was like when you grow up fast, and I was at age 12 already 184. That's I think roughly 6 foot, and already taller than my dad, and maybe at 72, 74 kilos. So athletic-ish, like, but not like, I felt like some lower back pain when I just lie down in bed at night. And So then, like, I know the doctor told me, like, back then, it's a congenital spinal defect, right? So I hope I phrase it right and correctly. So it's the lower spine, basically, the lower five discs are like pushed forward a little. And so to speak, I've had to always like learn how to keep, like he said, you have to always keep your abdominal muscles and lower back muscles very strong. I could never you know, get big of, like say, obese or get a big belly, and like I would need a surgery in case. On the worst case, he said, maybe in your 40s or so, you would need a surgery, right? And maybe like you could actually end up in the wheelchair, right? And that at age 12, well, that was my motivation really to have some sort of like physical practice, right? So I've started really, my dad bought me some, equipment, and I started to train every day before I went to bed. Like, 20 minutes was my practice, like, and that was like the foundation for physical practice. But then at age 18,
Yeah.
my father passed away, unfortunately. And so he, when he um, died, and I remember like when I well went inside the room, and I felt that he already left. The physical was still there, the body was still there, but I knew that he was, like, the spirit was gone already. It was a rainy day. I went outside, and then I felt him there. um,
Wow.
yeah,
Interesting.
something like
Interesting.
that.
Yeah.
No, it's something like key experiences where I thought, okay, there's something that leaves the body when you die. And maybe not because I'm, this is the thing. My mom is very like Catholic, I love her to bits. She's 92. She just turned 92,
Oh, wow.
right? I
Yeah.
went to see her for her birthday. Just came back from Germany, and she's well, for her age. However, well, she didn't do enough yoga in her youth as she should have, right? um, anyways, but
Yes.
she gave me like that spiritual sense, the way of like the connection that you could say, yes, I've always believed in whatever you want to call it. That higher power, the whatever. You don't need to use the G word, right? You can
Mhm.
use
Yeah.
any word. It doesn't matter. To me, it's also your higher self, or like maybe there's something beyond the material. And I've had one proof, maybe at 18, when my father passed, when I had this sort of first also sense of spirit. And then also when I was 23, I can tell you that I had a near death experience in South Africa. I was in Cape Town, and quickly, because it's a long story, but let's just say I was with friends. I was choking on a banana muffin out of a sudden, age 23. I wasn't really prepared for that, but I literally, I mean, someone, told, "I'll go and drink some," and on the way to the kitchen, my friends told me I passed out. Um, Consciousness was gone, and in the moment when my when I fell down, I felt I was leaving my body. I can say it like that. And I was drifting away, uh, watching myself lying down, right? And all I can say in that moment, there were no thoughts, um, and all I was or felt was love. Okay, like everything, the sum of love. Laughed moments, anything, like, and there were no thoughts, and it was like no fear, and it was a blissful feeling going home. That was my
Yes.
my
Yes.
sense. I just try, like, and obviously it's maybe unbelievable for many people, but um, this is, like one of the main experiences that actually probably made me a yoga teacher,
Yeah.
because for the first time I knew that there is a body that we experience, that we live with, that we have to have also, of course, without the body, there is no mind, right? But there is the mind, yes, right? But there's maybe something that doesn't die, doesn't get killed in the moment of, when you passing. Um, so energy, whatever you want to call it, for me, like there's something that when I felt in this moment was only bliss, and I'm going home, right? And in the moment I look back, I see my friend, and he comes up, and like I'm pale, and I don't know how long, maybe a minute or two. I was, out, no breath. I couldn't. There was no way that I could do anything. And yeah, I saw myself lying, and my friend came, and he was in the Navy before for 9 years, he said, and he did the Heimlich maneuver, Heimlich, however you pronounce it in American,
Yeah.
right? And um, so in the moment when he's took me up, and he's trying to make me reanimate, he like the first thought entered, like, and I looked back, and I was like, no, I can't die now, I can't leave now, I have to see my mom again, right? And so it was the first thought that kind of attached me again to the body. I want to say I was, when you let go, you let go. Like, to me, I believe, like, this experience also took the fear of death of me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not afraid. Like, for me, yes, there's pain and suffering, and of course that is part of life, perhaps. But if you can let go, there's nothing to fear. And yes, I couldn't, because I needed to see my mom again. And then the next thought, oh, I have to see my sister, and um, all the love, right? And
It's
basically,
yeah, amazing.
we are so attached by love, of course, which is, to me, also very important, like that experience, or like to allow yourself to. Um, and it brought me back, obviously, next moment. He got up the muffin, a piece of muffin, and I remember it was like someone pulling out, like, my first breath, like pulling out like an iron brush out of my lungs. Like, it was
Wow.
so painful, first
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah.
But it was like the first blessing. And I was like, I was back in my body, and I was,
Wow.
um, what can I say? It was I knew that every breath is a blessing of God. Here we go. I did say the G word. And for me, it changed completely everything. Like, and I knew that, well, number one, it wasn't maybe not the moment for me to die. Maybe maybe the moment is already fixed, who knows? Believing destiny and such, karma, or whatever you want. But maybe also, while you are alive, you should really appreciate it. You should really just appreciate just the little things, and just breathing itself. And here we go. Breath, pranayama. We're going into yoga. Maybe I was too young at 23 to start, because my mind was not ready, perhaps, right?
Yes.
But years later, obviously, moving to New York, the whole history, I'd say Dharma, of course. If you meet your guru, to me, it's very simple. If you have somebody to look up, like in like completeness, and some role model, you know, in this sort
Yeah.
of
Good
way, that
point.
you're
Good point.
knowing that, like, this is where, yeah, you want to work towards to, and like you want to be maybe even a little bit like Dharma, like, Sri Dharma Mittra, as his name says, like the inner calling, or the duty to be everyone's friend, right? Translated, so to speak. And to me, that's what he is. Like when you meet Dharma, he meets you as your friend, and he would teach everyone the same way. Mm.
Mm.
And for me, that is profound, to not divide and not uh, have some, like to me, the yes, the ego has to be kind of staying outside the studio if you really want to be, such accomplished yogi as he is. And I have to say, with all admiration, like he is, and um, there we go.
Nice. That's awesome, Michael. So then at that point, when you started to get deep in on the practice, you currently teach yoga. What was the transition for you to feel confident and comfortable to start to share your understanding of yoga with others?
Mm. Well, for me, it's again the master, the teacher that you need to copy, as he always says, copy the master, copy the master. And I have to understand that too, or I had to understand that like gradually, and I still do. The thing is like, what do you copy? What can you be? What can you be good in? What maybe like your teacher is showing you, right? And so you need to find out, I guess. And for me, I found out that, well, I'm literally, maybe it's my little bit of acting training that perhaps help, but I literally feel like, oh yes, I have to tell you one experience that is probably that key. You need to find the connection. You need to find what is real in you, what like reflects really like, also who you truly are. Um, Maybe you find the connection, what of style of yoga you teach. There are so many wonderful ones. To me, if you have a master that you can meet, if you've met even once, and to me, like this is the power of a guru, perhaps over distance, right? Like, because I've moved away from New York, moved back to Germany, stayed in Hamburg 2009, 10 till like 2016 when I moved to London. So I was teaching like in my first like groups, small groups like that I started like a Pilates studio, doing some workshops and just to get some people interested, because I tell you in 2009, 2010, um, long time ago, I mean, yoga was, I mean, still very niche, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
Dharma Yoga, I was the first accredited Dharma Yoga teacher in Germany, as far as I'm aware of. Um, I know that there were like, after like in Berlin and Munich, other teachers slowly popping up over the years. But in Hamburg, I was like, all these years, like just by myself. So just even cover a class, you would have to change style, of course, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very tricky to be the first and only, but it was also a challenge that I, wanted to accept, knowing that, well, what makes really Dharma Yoga, right? And for me, it's that authentic way, like the unbroken lineage that you can feel, sense perhaps by this spiritual wisdom, as always, Dhamma says, like sharing, like to share your spiritual knowledge is the highest charity, right? Um, for me to see this like lived in like a teaching, like that you learn from, and perhaps you try to get as close as possible a copy of this, perhaps over the years. Um, Also, let's say when we talk about authenticity, and some people say, well, oh, Sri Dharma, like he's just, just a great teacher. Others say, well, he's, the true guru. Maybe he's got some CDs, maybe not. Look, I can tell you in 2009, when I did my teacher training, um, another, unbelievable thing perhaps for many, but well, after about 2, 3 days into the teacher training, which was extremely intense, somehow like, uh, well, we were already introduced like to like level one, level two back then. Curriculum changed a little, and so yes, we had like one gentle Dharma yoga class, like I remember, but all the others were just like, it was just incredible. I mean, I'm an athletic person. I believe somehow I was, and I was what, 30, 31, 32, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, Dharma literally killed us back then. I mean, I have to say, for me, I mean, I remember like in classes where like I knew I was just dead, and I had to keep going, right? And you have to keep going, and you just are. It is so tough, but so amazing, of course, because at some point, if you let go, the body moves by itself. There is this like extra reserve tank opening, right? And that is when you let go. The mind let go, and you basically go beyond your own limits. And that's when I started to, when I went home after practice, being completely like knackered, tired, exhausted, everything. After like maybe 8, 9 o'clock, even like late at night, came home, and I went into the subway in New York, and the first time when I thought like I'm hearing like the holy Om, right, which is just, of course you wouldn't, right? Why, like, does it even exist, right? The mind says. But I tell you what, I went home and I went into the shower, and like, I guess water is some sort of like good transmitter. You have, like some, I guess in even like smaller places you can maybe hear it better. So, but how so, right? So, I mean, over 2 or 3 days, I was hearing it during the teacher training. And then the second day, it was very, very subtle, okay? But I could hear like, and I was first thinking now, and I'm maybe hearing it too much in the center. Maybe it's just, it's almost in my subconscious, and it's just like I hear it like that. I'm projecting it, let's just say, right?
Yeah.
Um, Well, questionable, because the next day I went, I mean, into the center, and I asked around, and there was like another two of 49 people that also heard the Holy Om. They were like also thinking they were going mad, right? One friend I remember, and so I went to Adam. Adam, who's of, also of the center, one of the highest disciple with, um, serving with Dharma, under Dharma, yeah. And he told me, like, when I asked, like, is it possible to hear the holy Om? And he said, well, if you're already tuned into it, right? So it's like, you could say like a radio frequency, that if you change the frequency, and if you obviously like maybe raise a little bit like your consciousness, your energy with nutrition. So I was like having wheatgrass shots left and right, which, by the way, amazing. Like, you can get them all the way in America, everywhere. Not in England, not in Germany. It's a very niche thing. Have you had wheatgrass shots? That
Yeah.
really stimulates as well, like
Yeah.
these sorts of, like, with the enzymes, like amazing. And if you watch your nutrition over a certain time, and you go really, like, of course, intense in the practice, and you allow yourself to, with the psychic development and do your pranayama and I mean, it's incredibly powerful what yoga really as a science is.
Yes.
And um, I have to say, I couldn't believe it, but I promise you, I've heard it for 3 days. Um, and when I heard it, like when I kept hearing it, I was like, okay, what do I do with this, right? So I try to just close my eyes and see what comes with it. And so yeah, you can say maybe you have some intuition, perhaps you need to trust. And let's just say I know the purpose maybe of that, right? Perhaps like Dharma has that sort of power, maybe also, to kind of give you that sort of glimpse, maybe, and perhaps make you know that maybe when he says like the goal is self-realization, right? Yoga, the goal is self-realization to understand your ego self, your higher self, like whoever you are, really. Um, then perhaps, like maybe like Siddhartha, when also I think, was it Hermann Hesse wrote Siddhartha, if you read the book, and he hears the Holy Om, right? I've read the book after, and I was like, I believe that really Hermann Hesse must have heard it too, because the way he described it was, to me, like proof for that. And I do believe it's possible, even in my own experience after many years. However, um, I can say that, like, I've had many people debate with me about this, and I love to debate about, of course, things that your mind doesn't want to believe. But you have to really allow, like, maybe some of those, um, well, extraordinary experiences, maybe that you can have with yoga if you're open for it, and in meditation and with psychic development, which is, probably one of the most powerful practice in Dharma yoga too. It's got something that I believe is so not only of authenticity, but also of that origin of Patanjali, of the Yoga Sutras. It goes really thoroughly into the science, really, of self-realization. And for me, all of these experiences obviously like connected and brought me maybe to this point, to London. And I tell you, London is not like the easiest city to live. So it's like New York, like, when you
Yeah.
have been there. It's not Florida. uh, yeah. And yeah,
That's
what can I
that's
say? Wherever
that's
you
amazing,
are.
Michael. That's amazing. I mean, I think you're doing a really great job of explaining the experience. And also, I like that you're not making us assume that you know exactly the best way to explain it. Like when you said, I like to have debates about this. I realize there's things that people will say, how's that even possible? Is that just our imagination? Are we reading it, and therefore, because we read slash hear it, do we then believe that it's there, and do we put it there, or is it there, and are we listening? And I guess
Mm,
this morning I woke up and felt a fair amount of fear. Like sometimes I'll wake up and I'll feel, I don't know if it's like existential dread or I don't know, something where my mind will just be there. So I got up, it was dark, it was 5 a.m. I thought, let me walk my dog. And I'm just gonna use music this morning. And so then I just asked like who should I listen to right now that would be good to get my mind a little more less fearful. Because I really like what you said about having a near death experience can cause one to feel like it's going to be okay. I have nothing to be scared of. So if the worst case scenario, the worst thing that could happen is that I die, then if knowing that that is not something to be scared of, then really I have nothing to fear, right? So I could
Mhm.
go through life not being fearful. So I put on Bob Marley, his album Exodus, his song Natural Mystic. And so as I was listening to the lyrics this morning, he's saying, there's a natural mystic blowing through the air. And if you listen carefully, you can
Mm.
hear. And I just
Mm.
started thinking about the eternal ohm, like what you're talking about, like, even cross culturally. And I mean, a lot of the deep wisdom of the cultures of the world ever since the beginning have been kind of tapped into being able to get the radio frequency to a place where we can feel that there's a presence and there's something more than us and there's a way that we're going to merge back into it or we're already merged into it, and so I guess I'm really appreciating everything you're saying and I like the delicate way that you're explaining it and I can relate and I understand what you're saying, so
Mhm.
thank you so much.
My pleasure. I think, everyone has to have some sort of experience in themselves to really make it feel like it's real, right? Like, let's say you can talk about yoga, right? Or you can talk about meditation, right? But to really do it or like to really like let it affect you, um, that to me is a choice. One has to be open for that, to be receptive, right? Like Dharma always say, be receptive. To me, if you're not receptive, if you're blocking, right, in meditation, of course you're doing the opposite, right? So you're needing to let go, right? Be receptive. And for me, yeah, I think you're as a practitioner, as a teacher, you have to be also receptive for maybe the good students, the maybe also the maybe bad mood students to come into your center or like studio. If you want to teach, you need to teach everyone the same way. That to me is like one like big lesson. And I teach people that have even disabilities, um, and for me it's so important like to see like the progress and the improvement, like even like you know uh, taught some football team in Hamburg, men, obviously, men's yoga, right? And to see their like not only like injuries less and the recovery like faster to speed up, and to see like their sleep improving as they told me, and their everything like the mind is settling and like you get more focused, more concentrated. People with like disabilities or with like even with strokes, sort of the after um, conditions, right? By any disease, to me, like when they can improve their health and you can see the improvement, you can see like how their speech is improving or things like that you thought like are never being able by yoga practice. But yes, that to me is like the magic that um, you have to be open for it. You need to be, well, allow it, let's say, or let it be, so to be, so to speak. And when yeah, let's say I teach in gyms, people want their physical practice, want their sweat, they want their, they want to do their handstands and splits soon, right? That is the most important. Of course, you can teach and please people like that. But I love the way that, let's say, yoga goes way beyond the physical, and that is it. You have to transcend the physical to understand yourself, the mind. And to me, mind is over matter, really, right? And
Yeah,
yeah, that's the difference, I think. Like, and you
yeah.
have to be, yeah.
Oh man, I hear you, Michael. Well said. I really can feel and tell that you are loving it, deep in it,
You,
enjoying
I
sharing
think,
it.
I do love to teach. Yeah, I do love to teach yoga. But look, I have to say, without Dharma, I would not be a teacher. I don't think. I can just tell by like I know how he affected me, how he changed my perspective, and that's it. If you find the right teacher, it doesn't matter who, really. The teacher who speaks to you and makes you not only come back to class, right? So you feel like, yeah, I feel accepted. I feel like, I really appreciated this and I want to, yes, maybe experience it more. But it's also like maybe letting you unfold your own self practice or making you understand your body better. Like I teach one-on-one as well, and I love that sort of personal experience where you have, the individual has his or her like condition, right? Age, anything, right? And so you have to really adjust the practice to the exact condition. And for me, that is what also like I love to, well, adjust and perhaps help people even through times when maybe they have injuries, right? And they need to recover, or they have conditions that need to somehow be improved. And for me, like that's why I also like, the not only the asana practice, but also going, with the breathing, pranayama, and the meditation. For me, that is where also you can affect people like children, right? You can, help people like elderly, and such, like people who maybe wouldn't really even try yoga, like me back then. Yeah, but I'm grateful that I did.
Oh man, amazing, Michael. I'm so grateful to hear. I know we had such a short amount of time together, and I just
The hour
really,
went fast, I
it
know.
goes
Yeah.
by so fast, doesn't it? It's like, I know I just looked at the clock and I'm like, wait a minute. Well, I just really appreciate you and like the care that you put into telling us your story about how much yoga really benefits you, and I can feel it. And I'm just so grateful that thank you so much for just taking time out of your day and sharing all that with us. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
It was a pleasure to meet you online, and hopefully one day, like when I come to Florida, we can
yes,
practice under the pavilion in, Bayfront Park.
that would be
We
awesome. And
should have a revival there.
that would be cool. Bayfront's an amazing, that's a great little place to have, that's a great big place to have a yoga
Amazing
practice. And
group there, yeah.
I had
Maybe do a
never,
workshop there together. How about it?
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, let's do it, Michael. That'd be awesome. I know, I know. Well, keep me posted, please, when you are coming stateside, and I'll do the same if I make it your way. And I
Absolutely.
would really love that. Thank you so much, Michael.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Om Shanti. All the best.
Om
Thank you.
Shanti.